Welcome back, or welcome if you're just joining us. It's the France 24 debate. We're looking at a China that's just announced that it's going to have 7% growth this year. Huge number by European standards, but less than in the past. Once again, the numbers are down. And some of the other challenges that the government faces on the day of the opening of the People's National Congress, where it has, we'll talk about some of the pledges, again, made by the government in the company of Jean-François Di president of the Asia Center here in Paris. Chunyan Li, founder and CEO of FEDA Consulting, and also the author of Succeeding in the Chinese Market. There we go, written in French, soon to be translated in English?
Last part, not all the book.
Ah, okay, part 3 will be translated in English.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
And in Chinese.
And in Chinese?
Yeah, about cultural difference and influence on the business.
Okay.
Yeah.
Also with us, Alice Ekman of the French Institute of International Relations, and China scholar Frédéric Poupati. Welcome back to all of you. We were talking about how China's watching its bottom line a lot more. That's what the Prime Minister said in his speech. However, there's cash for defense spending. On Wednesday, we learned that it's set to increase 10% in 2015. To what ends? The West is watching.
We continue to carefully monitor China's military developments and to encourage China to exhibit greater transparency with respect to its capabilities and intentions, certainly, and to use these military capabilities in a manner that's conducive to maintenance of peace and stability in the Asia-Pacific region.
On that score, a 10% increase in defense spending. What's your reaction when you see that, Jean-François Di?
Well, first of all, if I may, same reaction as for the 7%, because we all know that the military budget in China is twofold, the one you see and the one you cannot see. So if we are just catching up between the one you can see and the one you couldn't see before, well, 10% is not that big. Because there used to be a bigger difference, right, between the one you could see and the one you couldn't see, which was basically 30% over the official one. Now, if we keep it as a series of numbers which is consistent, well, yes, it is a big increase. This being said, we all know that the capacity that China needs to catch up with its various challenges, or at least the challenges that China feels are China's challenges, maritime challenge, the surrounding countries, also South China Sea, of course, conquering some part of what we call the Pacific Ocean, going further. Well, they need quite a few years more. So whether those few years would be counted in terms of percentages of budget or not, but it will still be quite a few years ahead before China catches up.
Frédéric Poupati, you agree?
Absolutely, yes. The defense budget is increasing on what is currently known as the traditional military defense warfare, the one which is including the maritime capacities, land capacities, etc.
And right now, what's the temperature on all of that? Because we saw that there's been a toning down of the dispute with Japan over the disputed islands. There's also, but as Jean-François was mentioning, disputes with other neighbors in the South China Sea.
Well, the dispute is a long traditional debate in China's foreign policy. It's actually a pending debate gathering both China and its Southeast Asian counterparts, the Philippines, Vietnam. And let us not forget Indonesia. Indonesia is a silent actor in the South China Sea issue, but Indonesia will have something to say about it for sure.
Could we see an arms race now over the years to come?
Yeah, we are seeing an arms race already. And I fully agree with what Jean-François said, that actually if you look at the state of the capabilities, defense capabilities of China, it's still far behind the US and Japan combined. It's still far behind in the Asia-Pacific. Now what Xi Jinping is aiming at today, and it is official, it's asymmetric catch-up with US forces in the Asia-Pacific. Asymmetric catch-up means smart power, meaning the use in a smarter way of the existing capabilities, as well in the same time of the modernization of the capabilities. And Xi Jinping is emphasizing on maritime forces. The Chinese government wants a strong navy, This is obvious when you see investment, and also when you see the amount of visits Xi Jinping made at the beginning of his mandate towards Navy bases of the PLA, or the People Liberation Army. So you have this aim in China, and you have to also take into consideration this military catch-up in the framework of an increased competition with the US in the region at several levels.
And just explain for our viewers, when you hear the State Department spokeswoman talk about this call for greater transparency on the part of China, what does she mean?
Well, traditionally, China's defense ministry, defense forces, but also China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs are traditionally opaque. Opaque institutions, figures are opaque because it's a sensitive, subject. And it's not just China who's been opaque, but I would say the level of opacity in China is particularly high in comparison with other countries. So
do you agree with Jean-François that they're coming clean now? That in fact these numbers don't really reflect...
Let's say they're making some effort to communicate, to put it in a diplomatic way. But it's true that it's hard to know the exact figure at the moment. We are all aware of the sharp increase. We are all aware of the asymmetric catch-up. We are all aware that China is still far behind US forces in the region.
Can I just add one point? I think as China is very big, it's also very difficult to collect the data from different regions and the cities, because we don't have yet a very mature system to collect different data. So I think we can always doubt about the credibility of data, but in the reality, I think it's not an easy task neither.
Well, if you're a Chinese general, you better know how many people you have on the ground.
Clearly, just to add a word, but clearly here's the opacity strategic.
Generally speaking.
You have a different type of opacity. You have, I would say, maybe issues on economic figures, which are different from issues on defense and foreign policy figures. And on economic figures, the issue sometimes with local cadres is that, and this is true since the 50s, even with the famine, is that local cadres want to show their superior, hierarchical superior, that they are doing a good job, and they tend to inflate the result of the province. And at the end, the agglomerism in the additional.
I don't think there was any aircraft carrier or submarines left in the wood. I think the count was pretty right.
Okay. And as we said at the outset, the official line is reform. At the opening of that National People's Congress, just ask this delegate from the northeastern city of Tianjin.
We will keep putting more efforts into tackling corruption and into reforming. We'll keep focusing on the people's quality of life and also on blue skies.
Yes, blue skies, a top issue, as Alice Ekman was saying in part one of our discussion, and fueling the debate, a 90-minute documentary called Under the Dome. It's by a former TV reporter, Chai Jing, who explains that she quit her job last year to take care of her daughter, who was successfully treated for a benign tumor.
On the way home, I already started to feel afraid. The smell of smoke was everywhere. I took a handkerchief and covered her nose. It was so stupid because she struggled and breathed in even more. I had never felt afraid of pollution before. I had never worn a mask anywhere. But now I was holding life in my very arms. I was responsible for everything. That would make you feel afraid.
Very interesting. It's filmed, Jean-François Di Meglio, like Al Gore's An Inconvenient Truth, with a lot of her walking back and forth. And it's really touched a nerve, this documentary.
Yes. The only difference is that when Al Gore speaks about pollution, of course, it's quite a gesture, but it's easier to make than it is in China. Of course, this is quite important because if there is any public opinion in China, and if public opinion may express strong dissent towards the power, this would come from the pollution issue.
From social issues.
Absolutely, absolutely. So it's quite important that it raises to this level of awareness, because that's quite new.
And there's two schools of thought here. There's this was, you couldn't keep this in a box, and others are saying, no, the censors let this pass because it reinforces the government, the head of the People's Congress.
Well, environmental issues have been taken into account a bit more. I mean, environmental expectations and expectations of the population have been taken into account over the last couple of years by the Chinese government. It's a sensitive issue, but a bit less sensitive than other issues. It's political, but today, I mean...
So it doesn't surprise you that the censors let this pass?
Well, nobody can neglect pollution today. It reached such a high level in Beijing, for instance, that it would be counterproductive for the party to censor the obvious, to censor the obvious. I mean, such an obvious phenomenon. And also, Chinese middle classes themselves, this lower middle class, upper middle class as well, they are themselves expecting a lot from the government in terms of cleaning the air. So I mean, it would be counterproductive for the government. The fear of the government is propagation of expectation from the population to a national scale that would be uncontrollable. So at this point, they choose to let it go, to let part of the population express themselves in order to contain the movement and maybe to take into account and to act at a faster pace.
Have you had a chance to see it?
Yeah, I saw it. I watched it, and I was touched as well. And among my friends, there were different discussions, also different opinions, but the majority is really in favor of supporting Beijing, for the environmental protection issue. So I think this time, over 48 hours, there were already 200 million Chinese people watching this video clip, and there was a national debate. And I think that's because today we cannot avoid talking about the environmental problems. So people are really looking for the solutions and trying to understand why. So
you were telling us before the show you're from the south?
Yes.
Is air pollution a problem in your city?
Yes, it's a little bit less than in Beijing, but there are always pollution problems. I think in all the China, unfortunately, degrees different.
Tell us what it's like. Do you have smog in your city?
It's not a smog. Smog is more because my hometown is close to a river, big river, and there are many factories for the boats to fabricate the boats. So we have big problems, for over the last 10 years. There was much pollution. And the river, before, when I was little, I could saw the river, it was transparent. Several days after it was transparent, after the VAG. But today, we could no more directly use the water in the river. So, and also I think there are problems with the land. So that's why I think today different regions and provinces will have different problems of pollutions, and people they realize the importance of to protect the environment. So that's, I think, one important reason why today everybody is talking about the video clip. And
there's been lots of articles here wondering why did the censors let this pass?
Yeah, I think there are several reasons. Firstly, it's really the public opinion. So you can no more hide this problem from Chinese people. And then the video clip was launched at the right time, because people we really want to fix the problems. And I think secondly, it's because in this video clip we showed that how it's complicated to fix the problem in China, because the central government's message is very clear. But then from central government to different regions, to different groups, and to different cities, it's so difficult to implement the policy. So this video clip shows this complexity. And then, to some extent, it's useful, helpful, for people to understand the complexity of a problem, and also for the central government to show to people it's quite difficult, in the reality. And also, I think the Beijing, she was not attacking the government. She was just trying to show the problems, analyze the problems, and at the end, she tried to say, okay, not only it's the responsibility of different groups and government, but also as Chinese, everybody should make efforts. So that explains why the video.
And the Prime Minister in his speech this Thursday promising to tackle pollution head on.
We must strictly enforce environmental laws and regulations. crack down on those guilty of creating illegal emissions and ensure that they pay a heavy price for such offences. As for those who tolerate and indulge the perpetrators, we'll punish them accordingly.
Frédéric Poupati, what did you think of the speech today on that respect?
The speech itself comes right in time, in the sense that China's been doing both a comprehensive and impressive job on how to tackle the problem of, let's take for example, the food security, land issues, environmental issues. And no, environmental issues is not the next big elephant in the room, right, for the government. So this is something that the government cannot ignore anymore. And by tackling the problem of air pollution, the government would prove itself, and to its people as well, that the prosperity of the Chinese people could somehow be preserved, can somehow be improved. And that's something the Chinese people is expressing quietly for the moment. It's true. But the day will come that the Chinese people would act and speak out loudly. No one knows exactly when this moment will happen, but that's maybe the next generation of Chinese citizens will actually take the major initiative for that.
Alice Ekman, there are people who've expressed frustration, saying that Prime Minister Li was short on specifics in that speech. He painted broad brushstrokes when it came to tackling pollution and air pollution.
Well, they are meeting for 2 weeks, so we hope that during this time and at the end of, in a few days, they will be able to issue more specific measures. But it's true that so far, it's been general declaration, and expectations are extremely high on the topic all over China.
You know, just like George Clooney says, what did you expect? Well, the National Assembly last 1 week. You have to.
He could have set specific targets.
Come on, you have 2,000 people in the room. It does represent the highest degree of representativeness in China. They are here for 1 week, and they are supposed to take the best decisions for a country of 1.4 billion people in 1 week. And the guy speaks, with all due respect to him and the high responsibilities he has, for 1 or 2 hours. So tell me, where is the debate? It's here, yes, this is the debate.
Debates in Paris, but not in Beijing.
Where could the announcements be? And why, listen so carefully to those words, which are just there to fill up the time of the session? There will be lots of very important announcements during the year, and there will be lots of change of tax in the upcoming year. 2015 should be a very important year in the Chinese policy. But you should not expect anything from this type of speech.
Yeah, but I mean, in China, one characteristic is that the central government defines the direction, not going into all the details. And that's why generally and often different provinces and different regions, they can interpret the law or policy in their way. That's one of the challenges of the Chinese market. But I mean, in the country...
I'm sure the temptation must be there when you're talking about smog and air pollution to set down specific guidelines.
Yeah, that's, I mean, overall for the pollution problems, I think the attitude of the central government is very clear. We must fix the problems. But then how? I think this is a big question because the country is so big, there are different problems. And we need to make a choice between the economic growth and the protection of the environment, because sometimes they are contradictory. So, for example, in the video clip, once we interviewed a factory in Hebei province, a steel factory. So the government official says, how can you close a factory with 100,000 workers? They will lose their jobs. So we cannot close directly like that. So we need to make a choice, and it's a difficult choice.
Which brings us back to what we were saying at the outset, which is this pledge to, in the future, get away from those high-polluting manufacturing jobs, outsource them to neighboring countries?
Well, it's already moving to neighboring countries because of the increasing labor costs within China. Well, it's two directions, one toward neighboring country, one toward the central provinces of China, such as Sichuan province. So some, let's say, some movement is happening in the labor market within China, but still the transition toward a more service-oriented economy is still a long-term transition. And today China is facing many challenges. We just talked about pollution, but there's also a big issue related to internal migration, total migrant workers, more than 200 million. The figure is so important, it's so huge that we tend to get confused with these big numbers. 200 million people within China moving, arriving to major cities to find job opportunities, but they are still attracted by major cities of the east coast of China, and the government would like to reorientate migration flows towards the more central part of the country. So you have all this transition happening, and the question that is asked is how to integrate this migrant population within cities. And here we go. We are facing the problem of the hukou system, which is the permanent resident permit, which is they are still also discussing this issue today in China, because a lot of debate is going on within the migrant population and also within the permanent resident urban population as well.
All right, so the issue of who gets to settle where, land reform.
Just to be clear, maybe everyone knows about it. The hukou reform means that you get all the citizen rights wherever you go, as opposed to currently, where if you are not from the city you live in, you don't have a local hukou or passport, and you don't have access, for example, to free healthcare and this type of things. So it's a big reform which is going on. But just to qualify what I was saying earlier, this government has been around for about over 2 years now. There has been lots of talks about reforms. The reforms have been announced, but not yet taking place. In 2 years' time, there will be a new team coming up, supposedly, because most of the 7 people who are now in charge will reach the age limit if there is no change in the constitution. So whatever is said it's just like mid-term now. So would you change something that you couldn't fix before, when the problems are even bigger than they used to be 2 years ago?
So they're kicking the can down the road?
Well, there are some announcement effects, and hukou is definitely one. The one-child policy is definitely one. But once again, on the one-child policy, what do we see? People are encouraged to have more kids, but they just don't want to, especially because of pollution issues. So the slight change in the one-child policy has not yet produced the effect, even though you know that demographics are running on the very long term.
China's populace is aging.
But there is an issue there. There is a very clear difficulty to put words into action.
And let me put this to all of you. I'll start with you, Jean-François. The fact that we're talking about this pollution issue, about switching more to a service economy, away from heavy industry, is that transition really happening?
No. Words are put into action in terms of anti-corruption. This is absolutely true. Words are put into action in terms of strengthening the central power. And I think probably that will enable the next mandate to implement measures.
And
for the moment,
strengthening the central power, when you hear Chen Yanli say that that it's tough to make decisions at the top and then have them applied at the local level, is that a good thing?
Well, it still is, but it's probably less and less so.
Chen Yanli?
I don't totally agree with Jean-François. Sorry. I think today in China, things are evolving very quickly. So let me take an example of the evolution from production to the consumption and to the services. So let me give you certain figures. Last year, the percentage of the consumption in China's GDP was already 51%. And in several years, it will be 55%, and it will be still increasing. And the services, for example, last year represented 55% in all the FDI, foreign direct investment in China. So it's already higher than in the other industries. And also the services industry percentage in the GDP was around 48%.
Let me quote my sources. No advertisement there, but I'm using very much UBS figures. They are very good economists in Hong Kong. And for years they have been announcing that growth in consumption will be higher than general growth of GDP. And year after year they're announcing it, and year after year China's economy cannot catch up on this stage. Economy is growing at 7%, consumption is growing at 7%. No more. That means that balance between consumption and the rest of the economy is not changing. And this is absolutely proven in the statistics. You have growth in consumption, yes, but this consumption growth does not catch up with the general growth of GDP. Am I clear?
I was talking about the percentage of the consumption in the GDP.
Far below 50%, unless you consider that, buying a flat is consumption.
Let me take an example because it's difficult to say.
Very briefly because we're out of time.
Okay, no problem. For example, the sales of iPhone was already, last year, the biggest sales of iPhone was in China. And also all the e-commerce is developing very fast. And China has already become the biggest country in terms of the retail sales of the e-commerce.
All right, so a split verdict on that one. We'll have to leave it there, unfortunately. But I want to thank you, Chun-Yan Li. I want to thank Jean-François Di Meglio, Frédéric Poupati, and Alice Ekman for being with us. Thank you for joining us here in the France 24 debate. All right, please remain seated because we're still on.